Thanksgiving night, they told me not to expect anything from him. He can't even remember anyone's name. 5 minutes later, rotor wash slammed the backyard, and a matte-painted helicopter landed amidst the screams. Grandpa stepped out, eyes sharp as a knife, and I realized the entire family had just walked into their own trap. My name is Andrea Brooks. I'm 32 years old, and I own Northline Restorations in Weston Falls. That means I'm the one you call when your Victorian masterpiece has a sagging foundation or your mid-century modern needs new structural beams. My days are spent in steel-toed boots, arguing with building inspectors and breathing in drywall dust. My office is the front seat of my truck. My hard hat is my primary accessory, and I am, according to my family, definitively not feminine. I am also, thankfully, completely financially independent of them. My family operates on a different frequency. They live in a world of brushed finishes, polite smiles, and conversations that feel like transactions. There's my mother, Lydia, who believes appearances are the highest form of morality. Her sister, my Aunt Corinne, who married well and turned it into a personality trait. Then there's Corinne's daughter, my cousin Savannah, and her husband, Grant. Savannah is a lifestyle influencer before the term existed. All curated grace and subtle judgment. Grant just assesses everyone by their net worth. They are, on the surface, unfailingly pleasant. Underneath, they are practical to the point of brutality. The patriarch, the legend, is my grandfather, Everett Hale. At 78, he's a former search and rescue pilot, a man who flew into blizzards to pull people off mountainsides. He's the man who taught me how to read a weather vane. But for the past year, the official family narrative, whispered with just the right amount of strained sympathy, is that Everett is fading, cognitive decline, severe memory loss. The hero is grounded. This narrative conveniently forgets that I was the one who paid his hospital bills 2 years ago when his insurance lapsed, a 5-figure sum I didn't blink at. It forgets that I was the one who personally reshingled my mother's roof last spring, during a hailstorm shortage when my little shop was the only crew that would take the job. Northline Restorations is only kais when they want to diminish me. It's surprisingly useful when they need something fixed for free. This year, Thanksgiving is at Aunt Corinne's sprawling hobby farm, Maple Run. The official reason, announced in the family group chat, is it will be easier for Everett to rest there. This, of course, implies he will be present, a passive, the quiet figure to be pitied. This announcement landed just after the other, darker rumor reached me, that Corinne had managed to get Everett to sign over a significant portion of his assets, just before his memory really started to go. I didn't need to look far for confirmation. 2 weeks ago, I stopped by my mother's house to drop off a new water heater. I heard them through the kitchen door, Lydia and Corinne, their voices tight and low. "The family fund is established," Corinne said, a note of finality in her voice. "Grant's people handled the trust." "And Andrea?" my mother asked, a sigh. "We'll tell her after. It's better this way. She's so emotional about him. She wouldn't understand the practicalities." The practicalities. I stood there, silent, the receipt for the water heater clutched in my hand, and realized I was her. The it was my grandfather's entire legacy. The phrase, "he forgets," has become their universal shield. When I asked Lydia why I hadn't been able to get Grandpa on the phone for 3 weeks, she just said, "Oh, honey, you know he forgets how to use the phone. It just upsets him." When I asked about his long-term care plan, Corinne smiled sadly. "We're handling it. Andrea, these things are complicated. He wouldn't want you to worry your little head." My questions were dismissed as noise. My concern was painted as ignorance. They were protecting him, they claimed, but it felt like they were isolating him. I decided to stop asking questions. I confirmed my attendance for Thanksgiving with a polite, simple, "looking forward to it," in the group chat. If they wanted me to be the oblivious, non-threatening handywoman, fine, I would play the part. I would show up. I would eat the dry turkey, and I would watch. My suspicions started with something small, something they would never think to check. As the owner of Northline, I process a lot of invoices. I am meticulous about automated payments. 3 days ago, a charge I'd set up years ago and forgotten about hit my business account. It was the annual maintenance and hangar fee for his old helicopter, a Bell 2006, kept at a private airfield. The bill was paid, as it had been every month, automatically. The maintenance logs were current. The fuel receipts were recent. My grandfather might be fading, but someone was still flying his helicopter, and they were flying it regularly. That invoice for the helicopter was the first thread. I didn't pull it. I yanked it. The maintenance charge was routed through a management company, but the line item referenced Hangar D Skylark Airfield. I knew where that was. It was a dusty, wind-beaten strip 18 miles east of Weston Falls, mostly used by crop dusters and hobbyists. Not the place you keep a high-performance search and rescue aircraft, unless you mean to use it. I told my foreman I was taking a personal day, a concept so foreign he asked if I was sick. I drove my truck out, the one with the Northline Restorations logo on the side, feeling the crunch of the gravel road under my tires. The airfield was just 2 metal hangars and a cracked tarmac runway. The air smelled like gasoline, sun-baked asphalt, and dry grass. I found Hangar D, and there it was, his Bell 2006, matte gray, looking more like a dormant weapon than a piece of history. A man in grease-stained overalls, who looked about 60, was wrenching on a nearby Cessna. I approached him not as a granddaughter, but as a contractor. Afternoon, I run Northline Restorations, just admiring the bird. Don't see many of these outside of air shows. Must be a nightmare to maintain. The mechanic, whose name tag read Sal, wiped his hands on a rag and squinted at me. She's a beauty, but the owner, he knows her inside and out. Comes in, does half the pre-flight checks himself. My heart hammered against my ribs. The owner? An old guy? Everett Hale? Sal's expression hardened. Who's asking? I'm a relative. He sized me up. Maybe it was the steel-toed boots or the fact I wasn't wearing pearls. You ain't the one from the farm, are you? The daughter? Or the other one? The smiley one? No, I said. I'm the one who builds things. Andrea. Sal relaxed, just slightly. He nodded toward the hangar office. Mr. Hale was in here. Let's see. About 3 weeks ago. Signed the logs himself. He led me into the tiny, cluttered office. The air smelled of stale coffee. He flipped open a heavy, spiral-bound logbook, the kind kept with meticulous, old-world precision. He ran a greasy finger down the page. There. E. Hale, October 29th. The signature was flawless. Strong, confident, zero hesitation. The signature of a pilot, not a patient. He seems active, I said, testing the word. Sal let out a short, sharp laugh. Active? Kid, that man is sharp as a tack. He told me, plain as day, said, Sal, my family's dividing the spoils before I'm even cold. They think I'm senile. Let 'em. He said he was tired of, excuse my language, that nest of greedy grandkids. He specifically told me, if a woman named Corinne or a man named Grant calls asking about the bird, I'm to tell them it's non-operational. Greedy grandkids, I repeated. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. His words, not mine. He seems to like you. Though, mentioned a granddaughter who knows how to use her hands. Figured that wasn't the smiley one. I stared at the logbook. 3 weeks ago, while Lydia and Corinne were handling his decline, the drive back to Weston Falls was different. The theory that had been a vague, paranoid itch was now a screaming certainty. The cognitive decline was a performance. My grandfather, the man who flew into blizzards, was running a counterintelligence operation against his own family. He had laid a trap, using their own avarice as bait, and he was letting them walk right into it. He wasn't the victim. He was the strategist. My next stop was the county clerk's office. I still had Sal's words ringing in my ears. He'd mentioned the maintenance contract, the one I used to pay, had been transferred. It's all paid for by some trust now, he'd said. Avalon Relief Trust. Never heard of 'em, but the check's clear. Avalon Relief Trust. It sounded serene and powerful, like the name of a shell company designed to hide assets. At the county building. I use the public terminal. I know these systems. I use them every week to check property liens and building permits. First, I check the addresses for the major assisted living facilities in the county. Summerside, Willow Creek. None had a record of Everett Hale. So, where was he? I ran a search on his name for any address transfers or utility activation. They said he was at the farm, or in a home. They were lying. A record popped up, a temporary residency transfer, filed 6 weeks ago, not to a nursing home, to a small, furnished rental apartment in Cedar Bluff, a quiet cluster of units just 5 miles from Skylark Airfield. He wasn't in a hospital. He was in a command center. I am methodical. I am a builder. I document everything. I took high-resolution photos of the screen with the Cedar Bluff address. I had already, after Sal had vented his frustrations, asked if I could record his statement for my family records, and he'd grunted. "Do what you gotta do, kid." That audio file was already backed up. I saved the photos to the same secure, encrypted cloud server, separate from all my Northline files. I was walking to my truck, my mind racing with this new map, a safe house, a working helicopter, a mechanic as an ally. This was not about memory. This was about war. As I crossed the street, a man exited the glass doors of Hawk & Tiller, the most expensive and predatory law firm in Weston Falls. It was Grant, my cousin's husband. He didn't see me. He was too busy looking pleased with himself, adjusting the cuffs of his tailored suit. In his hand, he held a thick, blue, legal-sized envelope. He slid into his immaculate black Range Rover and pulled away. The picture of frictionless wealth, Hawk & Tiller, the family fund, the practicalities Corinne had mentioned. Grant was their shark, and he was fresh from a feeding. That evening, my phone buzzed. It was the family group chat. A new message from Savannah. "Hi, everyone. Just a gentle reminder for Thursday. The doctors say it's very important not to correct Grandpa or test him if he gets confused about names or places. It just causes him agitation. The best thing for his comfort is just to be gentle, agree with him, and keep the peace. Let's make it a wonderful, stress-free day for him." I read the message twice. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive control. They weren't protecting him. They were setting the stage. They were establishing the narrative so that if he did say something confusing, like, "Corinne, you're trying to steal my money," they could all nod sadly, pat his hand, and dismiss it as the ramblings of a broken mind. They were prepping the battlefield to invalidate their target before he even spoke. I sat in my truck, the smell of drywall dust and sawdust a familiar comfort. They were building a legal cage. I build things that last. I went inside, booted up my computer, and ordered the best high-definition pen camera I could find with overnight shipping. It would look perfectly normal clipped to the inside pocket of my Thanksgiving blazer. I looked at the files I had gathered, the audio, the address, the picture of Grant. I created a new folder and typed in the name, Operation Turkey and Rotors. The sound of the rotors always stayed with me. It was a physical memory, a vibration I felt in my teeth. I must have been 9, maybe 10 years old, and my grandfather had taken me up in the bell for the first time. I was terrified. The noise was a living thing, a giant pounding the sky. I clutched the seat, my knuckles white. He leaned over, his old leather headset crackling. He didn't point at the dashboard, at the complex array of dials. He pointed out the window. "See the trees, Andy?" he yelled over the engine's roar. "See how the top branches bend? That's the truth. The wind tells you the story." The radio in the cockpit was spitting static and clipped commands from the ground. A chaotic mess of voices. I couldn't understand any of it. He saw the confusion on my face. When we landed, the sudden silence of the tarmac ringing in my ears. He knelt in front of me, his hands, calloused and smelling faintly of aviation fuel, gripped my shoulders. "It's loud up there," he said, his voice calm. The engine, the radio, everyone shouting. It's all noise. It's designed to make you panic, to make you forget where you are. You don't listen to that. He tapped the small, heavy brass compass he always wore on a chain. You trust this. You trust the compass, Andy, not the noise on the radio. 20 years later, I was sitting in my mother's beige and gray living room, and the noise was deafening. It was the night before Thanksgiving. My mother, Lydia, insisted on a pre-planning dinner. This was, I now understood, a dress rehearsal for the main performance. We just want tomorrow to be calm, Lydia said, straightening a perfectly hung picture frame. For Everett, he gets so agitated by too much commotion. He really does, Aunt Corinne chimed in, sipping a white wine she'd brought. The new doctors say a quiet environment is crucial for his state. Last week, he thought I was his sister, Savannah added, her voice dripping with manufactured pity. It was heartbreaking, but we just have to be patient. We just have to agree with him. There it was, the chorus. He forgets. He's agitated. He's confused. They were tuning the instruments, making sure everyone was playing in the same key of compassionate concern. I just nodded. The dutiful, hands-on daughter who didn't understand the practicalities. I was here to watch the faulty framework of their story. My mother asked me to grab the good wine glasses. They were in the study, the room where my father used to keep his ledgers, and where Lydia now kept her household accounts and, apparently, the family's secrets. As I stood up, Corinne moved. It was fast, but smooth. A politician's maneuver. She put herself between me and the hallway. "Oh, Andrea, let me," she said, her smile tight. "You don't know where Lydia moved them after the carpets were cleaned. Why don't you help Savannah with the appetizers? You're so good at arranging." It was a blatant block. She was guarding the room, but she was a moment too slow. As she turned, I looked past her shoulder. Through the open doorway, the desk was immaculate, save for a few neat stacks of paper, but on the corner, separate from the rest, was a thick, legal-sized manila envelope. Even from 10 feet away, the return address logo was unmistakable, a stylized A over a wave. Avalon Relief Trust. I must have stared a fraction of a second too long. Corinne saw my gaze lock, and her smile faltered. She stepped fully into the doorway, blocking my view completely. "Savannah, honey, Andrea is coming to help." When she emerged 2 minutes later, holding the box of crystal glasses, I walked past the study. I glanced in. The desk was still neat. The Avalon envelope was gone. I said nothing. I helped Savannah arrange crackers on a wooden board. We moved to the living room, where Grant was checking his portfolio on his phone. This was Savannah's arena. "Andrea," she said, her voice bright and probing, "how is that little company of yours? Northline, right? It must be so difficult. All the dust, and managing those men." "It's fine. Savannah, business is good." Good, she said, nodding, as if evaluating a stock. "I just worry. You're always working. You never take a break. What's your average project revenue, if you don't mind me asking? Grant and I are thinking of flipping some properties, and we were wondering what a realistic renovation budget looks like." She wasn't asking for advice. She was conducting an audit. She was trying to determine if I was a financial threat or a potential liability. Grant didn't even look up, which told me he already knew the answer. They had decided I was small. "I'm actually booked out for 18 months, Savannah, but I don't think my clients would appreciate me discussing their budgets." My mother, sensing the shift from polite interrogation to actual tension, swept in. "What Savannah means, dear, is that we're all a family, and with Everett, the way he is, it's a difficult time. We're all going to need to pull together." She looked at me, her gaze meaningful and heavy. "In the future, this family is going to need people who know how to think of the collective, not just themselves. The collective, the family fund, the one I wasn't invited to, it was bait. She was telling me, in plain terms, that my compliance now would determine my share of the collective later. This was my moment. I had to play my part. I set down my water glass, making sure my hand was steady. I looked at Lydia, and then at Corinne. I started, letting my voice sound hesitant. I've been trying to call him. The old number at his house is disconnected. You said he wasn't there. Where is he? Exactly. I just want to see him. Before tomorrow. Silence. A thick, uncomfortable pall fell over the room. Lydia and Corinne exchanged a look. It was the, oh bother look. The she's being emotional look. Corinne took the lead. She reached out and patted my hand. Her rings were cold. Oh, Andrea. Honey, it all happened so fast. We had to make a decision for his own safety. He's at a wonderful new center. Summerside. Summerside, over by the highway, Lydia confirmed, nodding too quickly. They have a specialized memory care unit. The best. He's safer there. He doesn't really know where he is most days. But the staff is lovely. Summerside, a name, a tangible, checkable, provable lie. They were sloppy. They had underestimated me so completely that they handed me the very tool I needed to unravel them. They mistook my silence for ignorance. Summerside, I repeated quietly, letting them think I was processing the sadness of it. Okay, that's good, that he's safe. I left 30 minutes later. Declining dessert, I sat in my truck, the smell of sawdust and primer a welcome dose of reality. The noise from the house had been overwhelming. Summerside, Avalon, the collective. My phone buzzed in the center console. I picked it up. A new message. It was from a number I didn't recognize. An internet-based proxy number, designed to be anonymous. The message was 5 words. Don't let them sign anything. My blood went cold. I stared at the screen. A second message popped up from the same number. They are trying to push it through Friday, after the holiday, when he's foggy. I slammed the truck into drive. Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, they were going to use the holiday, the manufactured scene of his confusion, as the final exhibit to justify a signature, the anonymous sender. Sal the mechanic? A nurse? Someone at Grant's law firm with a conscience? It didn't matter. It was my grandfather's compass. I got back to my workshop, which was attached to my small apartment. I ignored the invoices on my desk. I pulled up the Weather Service website on my laptop. I typed in the coordinates for Maple Run Farm. I looked at the forecast for Thursday. Tomorrow. The wind was coming from the west, shifting northwest around 3 in the afternoon. A clear window of visibility, the wind speed. Steady, 8 to 10 knots. Perfect conditions for a vertical landing in an open field. The best light, the calmest air, would be late afternoon, right when everyone was full of turkey and drowsy from wine. I checked my watch. I marked the time. Thursday, 3:45 p.m. My new pen camera was charging on the desk. My audio recorder was in my bag. They were planning a quiet, sad dinner where they could manage their patient. My grandfather, however, was planning a flight. I closed the laptop. I would be patient. I would survive the noise. And tomorrow, I would trust the compass. Thanksgiving morning. The entire town of Weston Falls smelled like sage and roasting poultry. I woke up before dawn, but I wasn't prepping a brine. I was at my desk, cross-referencing the address for Summerside Memory Care. It was, as Lydia had said, just off the highway. I was there at 7:45 a.m. The parking lot was mostly empty, save for the staff. The lobby was sterile and smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. A tired-looking receptionist sat behind a plexiglass barrier. "Good morning," I said, pitching my voice to sound like a stressed but loving relative. "I'm here to see my grandfather, Everett Hale. I know it's early, but I drove in from out of state and just wanted to see him before the family dinner." The receptionist tapped at her keyboard. She frowned. She typed again. "Everett Hale? Hale? That's right. He was admitted, recently, for the memory care unit." She shook her head, turning the monitor so I could see it. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We have no patient by that name. We've never had a patient by that name. That can't be right, I said, injecting the right amount of panic. My mother, Lydia Brooks, and my aunt, Corinne, they said they set it all up. Summerside. She looked sympathetic. I can check the system for the entire network. One moment. She typed again. No Everett Hale in any of our facilities. Are you sure you have the right name? Summerside? Yes, I said, letting my shoulders slump. Thank you. I must be confused. I walked out into the sharp November air. I wasn't confused. I was furious. They hadn't just lied. They had invented a tragedy, complete with a location, to sell the story. I thought back to Lydia showing me her accounts last month, trying to justify the new family fund. She'd flashed a stack of papers, including an invoice. The specialized care is it's astronomical. Andrea, you wouldn't believe it. I had believed it. I'd even felt a pang of guilt for not contributing. Now, I saw it for what it was. I drove to my workshop. I have a file cabinet 4 drawers high filled with invoices from Northline. I know what a medical invoice looks like. They have NPI codes, provider identification numbers, specific font families used by medical billing software. I pulled up the photo I'd discreetly snapped of that invoice when she'd left the room. At the time, I'd been documenting the Avalon Trust letterhead next to it, but now, I zoomed in on the Summerside invoice. It was a template. I could tell instantly. The font was Times New Roman, the default. A real medical bill would use a sans serif, like Helvetica or Arial. I ran the provider NPI at the bottom through the National Registry. It came back as unassigned. It was a fake, downloaded from the internet, a prop in their play. They weren't just lying to me. They were creating fraudulent documents to justify moving his money. I needed to see the command center. I needed to see Cedar Bluff. I was in my truck and heading east when the family group chat lit up. It was a flurry of activity. Savannah posted a picture of her perfect tablescape. My mother posted a picture of a pie. Then, a message from Grant, clearly intended only for Savannah, popped up for the whole group to see. Savannah, make sure you have the blue ink pens. We signed Set A, not the red folder, Set A. A second later, the message vanished. This message was deleted. He'd realized his mistake and pulled it, but not before it flashed on my screen. Set A, blue ink, specific, legal instructions. I was parked across the street from the Cedar Bluff apartments, a nondescript, 2-story complex. I watched Grant's deleted message replay in my mind. He was sloppy. They all were. They thought I was too busy with 2x4s to understand corporate espionage. I sat there for 20 minutes, no movement. The address from the county clerk was apartment 2B. The blinds were drawn. I wasn't here to break in. I was here to confirm. I got my confirmation when the utility van pulled up. A gas company tech got out, looked at his clipboard, and headed for the meter bank on the side of the building. I got out of my truck. "Hey, excuse me," I called out, pulling on my Northline Restorations beanie. "You with the gas company? I think my pilot light is out in 4C, he sighed, clearly annoyed. "Ma'am, I'm just here for a final read on 2B. Tenant's moving out." "Oh, 2B? The pilot?" I asked, playing dumb. "Is he moving? He seemed nice. Kept to himself." "Yeah, final read. Account holder. E. Hale. Paid in full. Moving out tomorrow. November 24th. Tomorrow. The day after Thanksgiving. The day Grant was getting Set A signed. The tech finished his work and left. The apartment was empty, and the tenant was leaving tomorrow. I walked up to the door. I'm in restorations. I know locks. I also know that 90% of the time, the hide-a key is exactly where you think it is, under the flimsy doormat. I opened the door, my heart pounding a rhythm against my ribs. "Mr. Hale?" I called out, just in case. Silence. The air was stale. The apartment was furnished, but barely. A sofa, a table, a bed. It was a ghost of a home, but the table was an office. It was covered in maps, not road maps, aeronautical charts, my grandfather's hand. The same strong script from the flight log was all over them. He'd been charting wind patterns. A red Sharpie had circled a large, open area. I traced the coordinates. It wasn't just near Maple Run Farm. It was Maple Run Farm, the backyard. A yellow legal pad sat next to the maps. On it, a checklist. My throat tightened. It was his pre-flight ritual. But at the bottom, a new note. Forecast. Thurs. 15:45. Wind, W 8 to 10 knots. Clear. Land backyard. Wheels down, 1600. He wasn't just coming. He was arriving with precision. The compass was true. I saw his old leather duffel bag by the door. The one he always took on flights. It was packed. He really was leaving tomorrow. I reached into my own pocket. The GPS tracker I'd bought with the pen camera was tiny, magnetic, and completely legal to place on my own family's property. I unzipped the side pocket of his duffel, slipped the tracker in, and attached it to the metal frame of the bag's lining, a new, silent compass. I couldn't just leave. He had to know I was with him. I found a torn envelope on the counter. I pulled the pen from my pocket. Not the camera, just a pen. I wrote on the back of the envelope, I didn't write, I know. I didn't write, I'm scared. I wrote the only thing that mattered. I'll stick to your compass. I propped the note on the legal pad, right next to his landing coordinates. I let myself out, locked the door, and put the key back under the mat. As I drove toward Maple Run, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a calendar invite from Grant. Event: Hale Family Trust. Final notarization. Location: Hawk and Tiller, Law Offices. Time: Friday, November 24th, 9:00 a.m. The anonymous tip was right. They were pushing it through. The final puzzle piece clicked into place. A new message popped up in the family group chat. This one from Corinne, Lydia. Can you please make sure the seating chart is right? I think it's better if Andrea sits by Savannah. We need to make sure Grandpa is comfortable and not crowded. Not crowded. They weren't protecting him from me. They were protecting their paperwork from me. They were afraid I'd be the emotional one, the one who might actually read the document to him or ask a clear question. They needed this one last dinner. They needed a public performance of his confusion to justify the private signing tomorrow morning. They needed witnesses, a table full of people nodding sadly, to back their play if he ever recovered and contested it. This wasn't a Thanksgiving dinner, it was a deposition, and they were about to be cross-examined. I had the what and the when. Now I needed to manage the who. They saw me as the emotional one, the little shop owner who couldn't possibly understand their high-stakes financial world. That was my single greatest advantage. Predators get careless when they believe their prey is weak, predictable, and best of all, a little desperate. It was noon on Thanksgiving. Time to bleed. I opened the family group chat. I found a brochure image on my laptop, a glossy render of a glass and steel commercial high-rise, the kind of project Northline would never touch. I snapped a photo of it on my desk, surrounded by intentionally scattered invoices. I uploaded it to the group. My message read, "Tough quarter. Really praying this new contract lands. Cash flow is a nightmare right now." The response was almost instantaneous, not from Savannah, with her performative sympathy, but from my mother, Lydia. Her text was sharp and immediate. "Oh, Andrea, dear, that's why we don't get in over our heads. Please don't worry about Grandpa. The family is handling all of his expenses. The fund is established. You just focus on that, my company, my life, my little shop." The bait was in the water, and the alpha shark had struck. She had confirmed, in writing, that she believed I was financially unstable and that I was officially, completely excluded from the family fund. They were now 100% certain I was not a threat. I was a charity case. Now for the countersting. My best friend, Maya Ortiz, was sitting across from me in my workshop. Maya runs an IT security firm and can bypass a firewall. Digital or human. Faster than anyone I know. I had already briefed her on Avalon Relief Trust. "You're sure about this?" Maya asked. holding the burner phone I'd handed her. "They're sloppy," I said. "They're arrogant. They're expecting a call from the trust. You're just confirming the details." She took a breath, and when she spoke into the phone, her voice was transformed. It was crisp, efficient, and utterly impersonal. "Ms. Jenkins, calling for Corinne Hale." We put the call on speaker. I heard Corinne's voice, bright and eager. "Yes, this is she." "Good afternoon, Ms. Hale," Maya said, her voice like ice. "I'm calling from Avalon Relief Trust to confirm the disbursement details for the Everett Hale portfolio, scheduled for tomorrow, November 24th, at 9 a.m. We are finalizing the presence of the mobile notary." Corinne practically purred. Yes, that's all correct. My husband, Grant, has the documents." "Very good," Maya continued, reading from the script we'd prepared. "And I have a final note on the file. We see that a Ms. Andrea Brooks has previously been associated with Mr. Hale's financial accounts. Our records show her as paying several large medical and maintenance invoices. Does Ms. Brooks need to be present at the 9 a.m. signing tomorrow?" There was a pause. Then Corinne let out a high, tinkling laugh, as if Maya had told the most absurd joke. "Oh, Ms. Jenkins, goodness, no, absolutely not. Andrea is, well, she's the boots-on-the-ground side of the family. If you follow, she runs a little construction shop. She's very emotional about Grandpa. She's not involved in these high-level finances. It would only confuse her and, frankly, it would agitate Everett." Corinne's voice dropped, becoming conspiratorial and friendly. "Between us, it's best if you only deal with myself or our family's legal representative. Grant, please, do not mention this trust to her. It's for her own good, and his. We're just protecting them both." "Understood. Ms. Hale, we will proceed as discussed. Only you and Mr. Grant." "Wonderful, thank you so much." Maya ended the call. She looked at me, her face grim. "She didn't just take the bait," Maya said. "She swallowed the whole boat. We had it, a recording of Corinne actively and maliciously instructing a financial entity to exclude me. The trap was half sprung. Now for my own cameras. I couldn't just walk in filming. I had to create a reason, a cover so plausible they wouldn't just accept it, they'd expect it. I hired a 2-person freelance camera crew. I told them I needed B-roll for a corporate philanthropy project. I called Corinne an hour before I was due to arrive. "Hi, Aunt Corinne," I said, my voice full of enthusiasm. "I'm so excited for today, and I have a little surprise. Northline is sponsoring a table at the community shelter's big dinner tomorrow, and I've hired a small crew to film a community and family vlog for the website. You know, showing our roots. They're just going to get some nice shots of the table, the food, the farm. It'll look beautiful. Just atmosphere. Is that okay?" She hesitated. A film crew was an unknown variable, but the community vlog excuse was perfect. It was non-threatening. Better yet, it was publicity for her perfect farm. "Well," she said, "as long as they aren't intrusive, my table settings are perfect." "They'll be invisible," I promised. When I arrived, the crew, a guy named Ben and a woman named Sarah, was already there. They looked professional and bored, exactly what I'd paid for. As they set up a main camera on a tripod in the corner, ostensibly to get a wide shot of the room, I got to work. The pen camera was already live in my blazer pocket, while Sarah distracted Corinne by asking about the best angle for the light. I moved to the heavy oak dining table. I pulled 2 professional, high-sensitivity audio recorders from my bag. They were no bigger than a pack of gum. "Ben," I said, loud enough for my mother to hear, "I'm going to put these under the table to capture the ambient sound of the dinner. You know, the clinking silverware, the carving, all that great kitchen noise." He just nodded. "Good idea, boss." I used gaffer's tape, a staple in my truck, and secured one mic directly under Grant's seat and the other under Corinne's. The table runner and centerpiece would hide everything. They were now mic'd for sound. My pen camera would get the video. The vlog crew made it all legal. We were called to the table. Corinne had, as promised, put my name card next to Savannah, but as I moved toward the chair, Grant stepped in front of me, a hand on my back, steering me. "Andrea," he said, his smile all teeth. "Wonderful to see you. We're actually going to put you over here, by the window. We need to keep this end of the table clear for when your grandfather arrives. Make it easy for him to get in and out." He was moving me as far from the head of the table and from Everett as possible. He was isolating me. I just smiled. "Of course, Grant, whatever makes him comfortable." I was the picture of naive compliance. I sat. Savannah immediately leaned in, her perfume a cloud of expensive judgment. "Andrea," she whispered, as if sharing a secret. "I'm so sorry to hear about your company's cash flow. That sounds awful." "It's just a tough quarter, Savannah," I said, playing my part. "Right," she patted my arm. "Well, listen, you just be supportive today. Grant and I are looking at a huge portfolio expansion. 5, maybe 6 properties. We just need to get this family business sorted out first. If you're a team player, Grant thinks he could throw a lot of that renovation work to Northline. We just need to get the paperwork done first. Then we can talk contracts. A bribe, family first, paperwork later. Be a good girl. Don't ask questions, and you'll get the scraps from our table." "That's really generous. Savannah, thank you for thinking of me." She smiled, satisfied. She had bought my loyalty for a few hypothetical contracts. In the inner pocket of my blazer, next to the blinking red light of the pen camera, was my own paperwork. Before I left, I had printed every invoice Northline had ever fronted for this family. The 5-figure hospital bill, the $10,000 for Lydia's new roof, the drainage system for Corinne's flooded lower pasture, which my crew did at cost, saving her a fortune. I'd put the simple, one-page ledger into a plain cream envelope. On the front, I had written just 3 words in my neatest script. "Thank you, Grandpa." I looked past Savannah's self-satisfied smile. Out the window. The wind was picking up, rattling the antique glass. The sun was beginning to dip, painting the clouds a bruised purple. The stage was set. The mics were hot. The trap was locked. All we needed now was the wind. The sky over Maple Run Farm was a solid, unforgiving sheet of lead. It was 3 in the afternoon on Thanksgiving, and the light was already failing, giving the day a bruised, exhausted quality. The air was cold, sharp, and absolutely still. Through the dining room's picture window, I could see the vast, dormant field that stretched out behind Corinne's house. It was flat and brown, the frost on the dead grass making it shimmer like a dull mirror. Inside, the scene was one of curated perfection. Corinne's 20-foot dining table was a masterpiece of rustic chic overkill, burlap runners, antique silver, wine glasses so thin they looked like they'd shatter if you breathed on them, the smell of thyme-basted turkey, sausage and sage stuffing, and buttery sweet potato casserole hung heavy in the air, a rich, warm cloak thrown over the cold reality of the room. We were all seated, my vlog crew, Ben and Sarah, were quietly filming B-roll by the fireplace, their presence an accepted, slightly vain indulgence for Corinne. I sat where Grant had placed me, by the window, watching the cold field. Lydia, my mother, clinked her fork against her water glass. The sound was sharp. "Well," she said, her voice bright and brittle, "he should be here any minute. Grant is just helping him in." A ripple of staged anticipation. "Now, everyone," Lydia continued, her eyes scanning the table, her gaze lingering on me. "Just a reminder, we are all here to love and support Everett. The doctors have been very clear. He will have good moments, and he will have confused moments. Whoever he remembers, he remembers. The last thing we want to do is embarrass him by correcting him or asking questions. We just want peace. We just agree. Gently. Is that clear?" It was a command, delivered as a request. Follow the script. "Of course, Mom," Savannah said, placing her manicured hand over her heart. His comfort is all that matters. Grant re-entered the room, wiping his hands on a handkerchief. He looked annoyed. He's just making a stop in the restroom, Grant said. He'll be right out. He seems very, very tired. Tired, confused, agitated, the adjectives of their defense. From the kitchen, a radio, left on a local news station, was playing softly. A cheerful announcer's voice cut through the quiet. And a reminder for anyone driving near the county line. The search and rescue team is running their annual cold weather drills this afternoon, so if you see a helicopter or two, don't be alarmed. Just our heroes getting ready. Corinne, who was halfway to her seat, froze. She turned, her face a mask of sudden, tight anger. "Lydia, for heaven's sake, can you turn that noise off?" she snapped. "It's Thanksgiving, not a barracks." Lydia, flustered, hurried into the kitchen and the radio was abruptly cut off. A beat of silence. Corinne composed herself, smoothing her cashmere sweater. "It's just so grating." Grant moved to the head of the table, where the chair for Everett sat empty. He leaned down, close to Lydia. I watched the reflection in the window glass. His movement was fluid, economical. He slipped a thick, rigid folder, bound in a sharp, legal blue cover, from his own blazer and passed it to my mother, who was on his left. She took it without looking at it, sliding it onto her lap and immediately covering it with her silk napkin. Set A, the prop was in place, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the star to be led to his mark. The conversation started, stilted and false. Savannah talked about a new shipment of equestrian boots. Corinne critiqued the cranberry sauce. Grant checked his phone, his thumb scrolling. The vlog crew was a blessing. Their presence forced the family to maintain their masks. I picked up my wine glass. The wine was cold, sharp. "I'd like to make a toast," I said. All eyes turned to me. I was the help. I wasn't supposed to make toasts. I said, letting my voice be the emotional one they expected. "I was just thinking about Grandpa, and I wanted to say, I'm thankful for the people in our lives who teach us the important things." I looked out the window, at the gray sky, to the one who taught me how to read the wind. Lydia and Corinne exchanged a tiny, pitying look. How quaint, how simple. Savannah, however, saw an opening. She leaned in, her smile a razor blade. "That's so sweet, Andrea," she said, just loud enough for the table to hear. "Speaking of projects, Grant was telling me about your cash flow. Is Northline, when are you planning to close the books? Permanently?" It was a kill shot, wrapped in concern. My mouth opened, but I never got to answer. It started not as a sound, but as a feeling. A deep, subsonic vibration that came up through the floorboards. It was the kind of tremor you feel in your bones before your ears can catch up. The surface of the wine in my glass, held halfway to my lips, began to dance. Tiny, concentric ripples shivered across the Cabernet. I looked down the table. The row of delicate wine glasses was humming. A faint, high-pitched shrine was coming from the crystal. "What is that?" Lydia asked, her hand going to her throat. "Is that the furnace?" Grant frowned. "That's not the furnace." Then the sound came, a deep, rhythmic whomp, whomp, whomp that seemed to come from the sky itself. It was low, powerful, and getting closer. The tablecloth, the heavy linen one Corinne used for holidays, began to flutter. The edges, hanging over the table, puffed and danced as the air pressure in the room subtly changed. "It's those drills," Savannah said, her voice uncertain. "From the radio. They're flying too low." "They're not supposed to be here," Grant said, standing up, his napkin falling to the floor. But Corinne was not looking at Grant. She was staring, transfixed, through the picture window. Her face had gone a bloodless, papery white. Her wine glass was in her hand, but she was gripping the stem so tightly I thought it might snap. The sound was a roar now, A physical assault of noise that drowned out all conversation. The house itself seemed to be vibrating. The silver on the table was rattling. Corinne was on her feet, her chair scraping back on the hardwood floor. She walked to the window, her steps wooden, like a sleepwalker. "No," she whispered. The sound was directly overhead, a deafening thunder. "No," she said again, her voice cracking. Her lips were moving, pale and dry. "It cannot be." I looked past her, through the glass. The gray sky was gone. The world was a vortex of brown leaves, dry grass, and rotor wash. A massive matte gray shape was descending, its landing lights cutting through the dusk. It was not a drill. It was him. The noise was everything. I slowly, calmly, put my hand to my blazer, my fingers resting on the slight, hard ridge in the inner pocket. The pen camera was running. The lens was pointed straight at Corinne's unraveling face. The show was starting. The Bell 2006, a machine built for hard landings in impossible places, settled onto Corinne's frozen lawn with a grace that felt like an insult. The rotor wash was a physical force, a focused hurricane. It blasted the picture window, making the glass sing, and sent a tornado of dead leaves, twigs, and bits of Corinne's prize-winning mulch spiraling into the air. Through the glass, I watched her perfect, rustic chic Thanksgiving, the one with the burlap runners, be utterly violated. The noise was an animal, a physical presence in the room, so loud it was no longer sound but just vibration. The entire family was on their feet, hands over their ears. Lydia was backed against the far wall. Savannah was crouched, as if expecting an explosion. Grant stood frozen, his face a mask of pale, furious disbelief. Then, as quickly as it came, the engine whined down, the massive rotor blades slowed, and a profound, ringing silence fell over the room. The only sound was the high-pitched tink-tink-tink of the cooling turbine. The side door of the helicopter slid open. A man stepped out. He was not the tired, confused old man from Grant's description. My grandfather, Everett Hale, stood on the frozen grass. He wore his old, cracked leather pilot's jacket, the one with the search and rescue patch on the shoulder. His stance was steady. His back was straight, and at 78, he looked like he could still fly through a mountain. His eyes, clear and sharp as chipped ice, swept the dining room, taking in every face. He was not alone. Two other figures emerged from behind the helicopter. The first was a man in a crisp brown uniform, a county sheriff's deputy, his hand resting professionally on his belt. The second was a woman in a severe black pantsuit, carrying a heavy, reinforced, and clearly locked briefcase. The three of them walked toward the patio door, their footsteps crunching in unison on the frosty grass. The family didn't move. They were statues in a tableau of their own greed. My grandfather slid the glass door open. The cold November air rushed in, clearing the smell of over-basted turkey. He stepped into the room. The deputy and the woman in the suit, the notary, flanked him, standing just inside the doorway. They were not guests. They were an official delegation. Everett Hale looked past Corinne. He looked past Lydia, past Grant, past Savannah. His eyes found me. Standing by the window, a small, sharp smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Your compass is still true, Andy," he said. His voice was not the thin, reedy whisper of a sick man. It was the clear, strong baritone of a pilot. It was the password. It was the confirmation. It was everything. A choked, strangled sound came from my mother. Lydia took a faltering step forward, her hand outstretched, her face a horrible mask of forced, trembling sympathy. "Everett?" she said, her voice a high-pitched, unnatural warble. "Everett, you're confused. What is this? You're supposed to be at the center. You're not well." My grandfather looked at his daughter. His gaze was not angry. It was cold. It was the cold of high altitude. "I forget what's worth forgetting. Lydia," he said, his voice cutting through her performance. "And I remember what matters." A new, desperate energy seized Corinne. This was not in the script. She lunged for the head of the table, grabbing the thick blue folder Grant had passed to Lydia, the one hidden under the napkin. "Father, stop this," Corinne said, her voice high and frantic. "You're scaring us. You're clearly not yourself. We prepared. Grant prepared all the trust documents. For the fund. To protect you." She held the blue folder out to him, her hand shaking. "Set A," she said, her eyes wild. "We just need you to sign. To make it official. For your safety." She took 2 steps toward him. The deputy stepped forward, putting himself between Corinne and my grandfather. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "Ma'am, I'd ask you to step back." He turned his gaze from Corinne to Grant, and his voice became official. "Ma'am, Mr. Grant, we are here to serve this." He produced a document from his own jacket. "This is a writ, signed by Judge Kelleher not 2 hours ago. It is a temporary injunction and a writ of asset preservation for all properties and accounts held by the Avalon Relief Trust." The name hit the room like a stun grenade. "Avalon," Grant stammered, his face going from pale to a sickly, greenish-gray. That's our trust." "That's where you're wrong, sir," said the woman in the black suit. The notary. Her voice was pure, cold business. "The Avalon Relief Trust was established by Mr. Hale 6 months ago, with himself as sole trustee. And that's when Grant, the shark, the man of frictionless wealth, made his first, fatal, clumsy mistake. He lunged for the blue folder in Corinne's hand. "Give me that," he hissed. His fingers fumbled. Corinne, in her panic, pulled away. The blue folder. "Set A," slipped from both their grasps. It didn't just drop. It flew open, scattering a sheaf of thick, cream-colored legal documents across Corinne's hardwood floor. And I saw it. The entire room saw it. The main signature page, the one meant for Everett, slid to a stop right by the deputy's boot. It was a full transfer of assets, a durable power of attorney, and at the bottom, a single, damning line. Date, and next to it, pre-filled in Grant's neat, arrogant hand, was the date. November 24th. Tomorrow. They hadn't even waited. They had predated the documents they planned to force him to sign today, the day he was confused, to be notarized tomorrow. The deputy looked down at the paper. He didn't touch it. He just looked at Grant. "Sir, I'm going to advise you not to touch any of those documents." My grandfather paid them no attention. He walked to the head of the table, to the empty chair they had reserved for their patient. He reached into the pocket of his flight jacket and pulled out a small, flat, rectangular object. It was a simple, old, metal tin, the kind mechanics keep bolts in. He placed it on the table. It made a solid, metallic thud that echoed in the dead silence. "My family," he said, his voice resonating with command, "believes I have lost my mind. They believe I am incapable of handling my own affairs." He flipped the lid. The tin wasn't full of bolts. It was full of documents. "This," he said, pulling out a small bound book, "is my personal flight log, showing 42 hours of flight time in the last 6 weeks, including the flight I took 3 weeks ago, on October 29th. He looked at me. "The day Sal the mechanic said I was sharp as a tack." He pulled out a small, black USB drive. "This is a video, time-stamped, from my attorney's office, of my full, sworn statement, also from 6 weeks ago." He pulled out a final, folded document. It was crisp, new. "And this is the one that really matters. This is a full cognitive assessment and medical power of attorney, signed, certified, and notarized just last week by Dr. Aris, the head of neurology at Weston General, a doctor, I might add, that none of my family has ever met, a doctor who attests, under penalty of perjury, that I am in full command of all my faculties." He placed the document on the table, a stark white counterpoint to the blue mess on the floor. The trap was sprung. The narrative was dead. I turned to my vlog crew, who were standing by the fireplace. their camera off, their faces stunned. I caught Ben's eye. I didn't whisper. "Ben, start rolling. Sharp. Get all of this." Ben's camera was rolling, its red light a sudden, judgmental eye in the dimming room. The silence was absolute, broken only by the whir of the camera's focus and Corinne's ragged breathing. The notary, Ms. Graves, stepped forward into the center of the room. She placed her locked, reinforced briefcase on the table, moving the untouched turkey carving knife to the side. The click of the latch's opening was as loud as a gunshot. "I am Alana Graves, a registered notary public," she announced. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "I am here, at the formal request of Mr. Everett Hale, to unseal and read the binding last will and testament, signed and executed by Mr. Hale 6 months ago, on May 12th of this year." "No!" Corinne cried, lunging forward. "We have a will, the one from 2005. He's not well. This is coercion." "The will from 2005, ma'am," Ms. Graves said, not looking up, "was legally revoked and superseded by this document." She pulled a thick, bound document from her case. A revocation that was, I must add, co-signed by his primary care physician, Dr. Aris, certifying Mr. Hale's full cognitive capacity at the time of signing. She cleared her throat. She began to read. "All previous testaments are declared null and void. The estate of Everett Hale shall be distributed as follows." I watched Grant. He looked like he was going to be physically ill. Item 1. Ms. Graves read, 10% of all liquid assets are to be placed into a newly established Weston Falls Vocational Scholarship Fund. This fund is to be administered, she paused, by Ms. Andrea Brooks of Northline Restorations, for the sole purpose of providing full tuition and tool grants to those entering the skilled construction trades. My legs felt weak. I gripped the back of a chair. Administered by me. Item 2. 10% to the Everett Hale Aviation Rescue Fund to support local volunteer search and rescue operations. Item 3. The remainder of the estate, including all properties, equities, and all assets currently held within the Avalon Relief Trust, shall be placed into a conditional testamentary trust. Grant finally spoke, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Conditional?" Ms. Graves looked up, her gaze pinning him. "The conditions are specific. The trust will distribute funds only to beneficiaries who," she read directly from the page, "have demonstrated no attempt to incite, isolate, or financially benefit from the propagation of false or misleading information regarding my cognitive state." A low, horrified moan escaped my mother's lips. Ms. Graves continued, relentless. "The will defines propagation as repeatedly telling others, including other family members, that I'm suffering from memory loss, dementia, or cognitive decline, when they have received no official medical diagnosis to that effect. It was a legal masterpiece, a bear trap hidden under a silk cloth. And as for that," my grandfather said, "we have this." He nodded to the deputy, who took the small USB drive from the metal tin. He walked to Corinne's massive wall-mounted television and plugged it in. "Everett, no," Lydia pleaded. "Don't do this. It's Thanksgiving." "You wanted to put my confusion on display." "Lydia," he said, his voice like iron. "Let's watch the tape." The screen flickered, and there was my grandfather, sitting in a bright, professional office. He looked straight into the lens. "My name is Everett Hale," he said, his voice booming from the speakers. "It is October 11th. I am of sound mind and body. I am making this recording because my family, specifically my daughters, Lydia Brooks and Corinne Hale, and my granddaughter's husband, Grant, have begun a systematic campaign to declare me mentally incompetent." Savannah let out a sound like a small animal being stepped on. "They are spreading rumors that I am fading and forgetting." Video Everett continued. "They believe I do not see their attempts to isolate me, to intercept my calls. They are wrong. They are doing this to gain control of my assets. This video is my sworn testimony that I am being targeted by my own children." The deputy clicked the TV off. The black screen reflected a room of shattered faces. He then turned, pulling on a pair of latex gloves, and knelt. He began carefully collecting the documents Grant had dropped. The predated Set A. Based on this testimony, the predated documents on the floor, and other evidence provided by Mr. Hale's counsel, the deputy said, his voice now cold and official. My office is opening a formal investigation into financial elder abuse and conspiracy to commit fraud. You can't, Grant shrieked, finding his voice. Those are privileged. You can't take them. They are evidence of a crime. Mr. Grant, the deputy said. He stood, holding the folder. And we already have the warrants, including the one that allowed us to extract the communication logs from your phone, which you voluntarily handed to me when I identified myself at the door. He looked at his own phone. Specifically, the email you sent Corinne 2 days ago. Have the blue pens. Tell him it's just a greeting card. We just need the signature. The notary is set for 9 a.m. Friday. Corinne made a choking sound and sank into her chair, her face in her hands. Lydia, my mother, rushed to my grandfather, her face a mask of streaming tears. This was her last play, the repentant daughter. Daddy, she wept, clutching his arm. Daddy, please, we were so worried about you. We love you. We didn't understand. We were just trying to manage things. My grandfather looked at her hand on his leather sleeve. He didn't pull away. He just gently, firmly, unhooked her fingers and stepped back. I'm still lucid. Lydia, he said, his voice quiet, almost sad. Stop managing me. The room was silent, waiting for the next blow. I realized it was my turn. I walked forward, past the wreckage of the table. I stood in front of my grandfather. The cameras, Ben's and my own pen, were capturing it all. I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out the simple cream envelope. Thank you, Grandpa, I said. He looked at the envelope, confused. He took it. He opened it. He pulled out the single-page ledger I had printed. His eyes scanned the lines. I knew them by heart. The $54,000 for the hospital bill, the $10,000 for my mother's new roof, the $7,000 for Corinne's pasture drainage, the endless, smaller expenses that I had covered without a word because I was family. And that's what I thought family did. He read the total, $76,300, and then the final line I had written at the bottom, I don't want it back. He stood there for a long time, the paper shaking slightly in his hand. He looked up at me. The iron was gone from his eyes. A compass can't be sold. Andrea, he said, his voice thick. It's worthless to anyone who can't read it, but it always points true. A new voice, tinny and sharp, cut through the room. And I can attest to that. Mr. Hale, the deputy was holding his phone up. A video call was active. A woman with severe glasses and a wall of law books behind her was staring out. My name is Marin Dorsey, she said. I am lead counsel for Everett Hale. I am also the primary administrator for the Avalon Relief Trust. Grant's head snapped up. You're Avalon? Mr. Hale and I established the real Avalon Trust 6 months ago. Mr. Grant, she said, her voice dripping ice. We created it as a fortress to protect his assets from you. We knew you'd try to build your own fraudulent fund. We just made ours first. Every document your firm filed, my firm countered. You've been chasing a ghost. It was the final, perfect double trap. Corinne shot to her feet, her face a mask of raw, primal rage. You schemed, she shrieked at my grandfather, pointing a shaking finger. You plotted this. Against your own family. You used her. My grandfather zipped his leather jacket. He looked at his daughter, his eyes as clear as the winter sky. Corinne, he said, his voice calm and final. You were all planning for a storm. I just decided to fly higher than the bad wind. The room, which had been frozen in shock, now seemed to simply deflate. The fight was over. and the victors had been declared. Ms. Graves, the notary, was not finished. She looked back down at the will, her finger finding the next clause. Regarding the conditional testamentary trust, she read, her voice cutting through Lydia's quiet sobs. The designated supervisor of this trust, tasked with evaluating the good faith of potential beneficiaries and solely responsible for directing the community projects funded by the trust, is Ms. Andrea Brooks. If the first part was a shock, this was the execution. I wasn't just in charge of the scholarship, I was the gatekeeper. I was the one who would judge their good faith. I wasn't given his money. I was given his power. Ms. Brooks will receive no immediate cash distribution from the estate. Ms. Graves continued, as if to underscore the point. She will, however, have full signing authority over the Trust's community and philanthropic projects, as defined in Schedule C, which includes the Vocational Fund and Urban Renewal projects. Savannah, who had been staring at the floor, slowly lifted her head. Her gaze was not angry. It was something far more profound. It was a look of pure, unadulterated recalculation. She was looking at me, really looking at me, for the first time in our entire lives, not as little Andy, not as the handy woman, not as the emotional cousin with the tiny shop. She was looking at the person who now held her entire financial future in her hands. The look was one of shock, respect, and a terrifying, dawning horror. A final condition, Ms. Graves said, closing in. If, after a period of 1 year from the date of my death, the relatives in question, she glanced up at Lydia, Corinne, and Grant, have, in the sole judgment of the trust supervisor, Ms. Brooks, demonstrated tangible, actionable, and consistent good faith, they will be granted a one-time symbolic distribution, she paused for effect, of $1,000 each. $1,000. It wasn't an inheritance, it was an insult, a tip, a rounding error in their monthly budget. Lydia collapsed into her chair, a raw, broken wail tearing from her throat. No, Daddy, no, please, not this. I'll do anything. I'll fix it. We can give it to the scholarship. We'll give it all back. Please, just give me a chance. My grandfather looked at her, his face unreadable. You had a chance, Lydia. You've had a chance for 30 years. Grant, who had been catatonic, suddenly moved. His hand, which had been on the table, shot to his pocket. Grabbing his phone, he was already typing, his thumb a blur, deleting, wiping. Mr. Grant, the deputy said, his voice a calm, lethal command. He was at Grant's side in 2 steps. Put the phone on the table, face down, now. This is my personal property, Grant snarled. It's now evidence in an investigation. You are currently in violation of a legal writ by interfering with potential evidence. Put the phone on the table. Grant's eyes darted around, looking for an exit, a lawyer, an escape. He found none. He slowly, his hand trembling with rage, placed his phone on the table. The deputy picked it up, dropped it into a sealed evidence bag, and wrote Grant's name on the tag. You'll be hearing from the DEA's office regarding your client, Ms. Dorsey, the deputy said to the phone screen. We look forward to it, the lawyer's voice replied. My grandfather walked around the table, ignoring the carnage of his family's ambitions. He stood in front of me. The room was watching. The camera was rolling. He reached into his jacket pocket. I thought he was done. He pulled out the small, heavy brass object I had seen him use 1,000 times. The compass he'd worn around his neck on every flight. I taught you to read the wind, he said, his voice low. Just for me. I taught you to trust the compass, not the noise on the radio. He pressed the compass into my palm. It was warm from his body, heavy and real. You're the pilot now, Andy, he whispered. Your call. He was handing me the authority, not just of the trust, but of the family. He was asking me what happened next. I closed my hand around the compass. I felt the sharp edges, the solid weight. I looked at the devastated table, the cold, congealing turkey, the uneaten pie, the shattered faces. This wasn't a family. It was a crash site. I turned to Ben, my cameraman. Ben? Sarah, thank you. That's a wrap on the family scene. Andrea, no, Corinne whispered, her eyes wide. Don't show that. The footage is for the community project. Aunt Corinne, I said. And the deputy has the rest. What I want is for my grandfather to have a Thanksgiving dinner. I looked at Ben. Stop recording the table. Get some B-roll of the farm. Then pack it up. The performance is over. Ben nodded, and the red light on his camera winked out. The deputy and Ms. Graves were conferring by the door. The lawyer on the phone had hung up. The official business was done. My grandfather stood at the head of the table. He picked up the carving knife and the fork. He looked at the turkey, and for the first time all day, he smiled. A genuine, warm smile. Well, he said, his voice booming in the quiet room, this bird isn't going to carve itself. Who wants dark meat? He plunged the fork into the turkey. His hand was rock steady. There was no tremor, no hesitation. The confused, agitated, tired old man was gone. In his place was Everett Hale, pilot, patriarch, and the undisputed master of the room. He began to carve, the slices falling away perfectly. Lydia and Savannah watched, stunned into silence. Corinne just stared at the wall, her face a blank mask. Her Friday morning meeting at Hawk and Tiller, the one to sign Set A, had just been vaporized by a federal asset freeze. Her entire plan was ash. Grant was just staring at the evidence bag with his phone in it. You know, my grandfather said, deftly separating a drumstick, this reminds me of the winter of '86. We were flying a rescue op near the Canadian border. A blizzard came out of nowhere, whiteout conditions, complete radio failure. He paused, looking at the slice of turkey on his knife. The radio was just static, he said. All I could hear was the ice hitting the windscreen and my co-pilot panicking in my ear. He kept yelling that we were blind, that we were going down. He looked up, his eyes finding mine. But I could still feel the wind, he said. I could feel the way the air was holding the aircraft. The static was just noise. The wind was the truth. I ignored the radio, trusted the compass, and flew us home by feel. He placed a perfect slice of turkey on a plate and handed it to me. I've always hated static. The message was unmistakable. They were the static. I was the compass. I looked across the wreckage of the table, at the people who had tried to build a cage of noise around him. Corinne was dead-eyed. Lydia was weeping silently. Savannah was just watching. My grandfather looked at them, his face not angry, but sad. A flight crew, he said, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. Keeps radio silence to hear the wind, not to hide things from each other. The room was thin, the air sucked out by the vacuum of justice, the smell of the cold. Congealing turkey was no longer a feast. It was the scent of a wake. Marin Dorsey, the lawyer still on the video call, spoke first. Her voice was a sharp, professional scalpel. Deputy, Ms. Graves, I need Mr. Hale and Ms. Brooks to sign the field affidavits. Confirming the execution of the writ and the unsealing of the will, we need a wet signature chain of custody. Ms. Graves, all business. Slid 2 pages from her case. She clicked her pen. My grandfather signed, his hand firm. I signed after him. The deputy finished bagging Grant's phone. He knelt and methodically, clinically, gathered the scattered pages of Set A. He placed the predated signature page on top, slid the whole toxic bundle into a large evidence bag, and sealed it with tape. He wrote on the label, "That's evidence of intent, conspiracy, and fraud." Ms. Dorsey's voice noted from the phone. This just got much, much worse for them. My grandfather watched this, not with triumph, but with a profound, weary resolution. He had finished his flight. He looked at me, the compass still heavy in my hand. "One last thing. Andy," he said, loud enough for the room, for the record. "That trust, the scholarship, it's a lot of power. And power, even in good hands, tends to warp the compass." He turned to Ms. Dorsey on the phone. "Marin, let's make the final addendum official." "Yes, Everett," she replied. "The community trust," he announced, "will require 2 signatures for any disbursement over $5,000, Andrea's and Tom Cassidy's." Tom Cassidy was the head of the county search and rescue team, a man made of pure, unbuyable integrity. It was a masterstroke. He wasn't just giving me power, he was protecting me from it. He was insulating me from future accusations of bias, preventing me from ever becoming them. I wouldn't just be the gatekeeper, I'd have a partner. I nodded, my throat tight. "That's smart, Grandpa." This final, structural click of the lock broke the spell. Lydia, seeing the last door of manipulation slam shut, scrambled. "The jewelry!" she cried, her voice cracking. "Everett, my jewelry, the pieces from Mother, and the diamonds. I can sell them. I'll donate it all to the scholarship fund. As a founding donation. We can start fresh. We can fix this." It was a desperate, transactional plea. "See? I'm good." I looked at my mother. I didn't feel anger. I felt a vast, cold emptiness. "Lydia," I said. Her name sounded strange. Not Mom. 1 year. She looked at me, her eyes wide and confused. "You have 1 year to demonstrate good faith," I said, my voice as steady as the compass in my hand. "Don't sell your jewelry. That's just another checkbook apology. Go volunteer. Find a purpose. Do the work. We'll see where you are in 1 year." "We'll see." It was all I gave her. It was more than she deserved and less than she wanted. Then, a different voice. "Savannah." She was pale, her expensive makeup a cracked mask on her frightened face. She looked at me, her eyes, for the first time, holding no judgment. "I did it," she said, her voice a dry rustle. "What?" Corinne hissed from her chair. "I'm the one," she said, stronger, looking at my grandfather. I kept telling everyone you were fading. I told Mom. I told Lydia. I even told Andrea. She took a shaky breath. I wanted her to stop asking. I wanted her to stop digging. Every time she got close, I said you'd had a bad day, or that you thought I was someone else. I made it, worse than it was, to shut her up. It was a full confession. She looked at me. "The scholarship, the vocational fund. You're going to build things. You're going to restore houses?" "That's the plan," I said. Can I help?" she asked. "I don't mean with money. I mean, I'm good at organizing. I could schedule the volunteers. I could paint. I could do anything." This was different from Lydia's plea. It was the first real thing she had ever said. "We'll see. Savannah," I said. 1 year. Actions, not words. Corinne had been watching this, her face twisting. The 2 women in her family were abandoning her sinking ship, trying to swim for the one I was building. "You're pathetic," she spat, her voice venomous. She stood up and pointed a trembling finger at her husband, who was still frozen in his chair. "This was him. This was all him. Grant. He told me it was standard. He said it was just estate planning. He said you were a threat. Andrea, he told me to use the blue pens. He told me what to say." She was throwing him to the wolves to save her own skin. Grant just looked at her, his face a void. And that's when I moved. I walked to the table, bent down, and retrieved the small, black audio recorder I had taped under her chair. The one I'd placed to get ambient kitchen noise. I held it up. "We should check the tape," I said. Corinne's face went from white to the color of ash. I pressed the play button. The speaker was small, But in the dead silent room, her voice, from her call with Maya, was perfectly clear. Between us, it's best if you only deal with myself or our family's legal representative. Grant, please, do not mention this trust to her. I stopped it. I rewound it to another track. The moment she'd been recorded, under the table, whispering to Grant. Just get the signature. Tell him it's a greeting card. Just get him to sign it. I held the recorder. The deputy will probably want this, too. Corinne collapsed into her chair, a broken, silent scream on her face. The deputy, who had been watching this all unfold, stepped forward. He pulled one last document from his jacket. It wasn't an evidence bag. It was a summons. "Mr. Grant Hawthorne," he said, his voice formal. Grant didn't move. "Mr. Grant Hawthorne," the deputy repeated, "you are hereby served this summons to appear before a grand jury in the matter of the State versus Grant Hawthorne. Regarding the investigation of financial elder abuse, a patrol car is waiting at the end of the driveway." He wasn't arrested. He was served. At the Thanksgiving table, the ultimate humiliation, his reputation, the only currency he truly valued, was incinerated. He stood up, adjusted his cuffs, a reflexive, pathetic gesture. He took the paper. He walked out of the room without a word, a dead man walking. The room was empty. The ghosts had been exorcised. My grandfather zipped his flight jacket. He looked at me, the warmth back in his eyes. "Well, Andy, I've got a plane to file. You fly the rotors now." He turned and walked out the patio door. The sun had set, and the helicopter's landing lights cut two bright cones in the blue dusk. The whine of the turbines spinning up began, a sound of hope, of escape. He climbed into the pilot's seat. I followed him. As I put my foot on the skid, he looked at me. "From up here, Andrea," he said, his voice crackling slightly over the engine's whine. "Every path looks straight, if you just know how to look." I climbed in and secured the door. I sat in the co-pilot's seat, the brass compass heavy and solid in my fist. Through the cockpit glass, I looked down. My family. They were three small, shattered figures on a perfectly manicured lawn, frozen in the cold, staring up at the machine that had taken their world away. My mother, Lydia, weeping. My aunt, Corinne, a hollow statue. My cousin, Savannah, watching me. Just watching me. Each of them, finally, facing the mirror of their own truth. My grandfather pulled pitch. The helicopter lifted, the rotor wash, a final, cleansing wind, blasted the roof of Maple Run Farm. The ground fell away, the house shrinking, the farm becoming a small, dark patch in a larger world. I looked out at the lights of Weston Falls, spread out like a circuit board. I thought about the scholarship. I thought about the vocational classes. I thought about drywall and new foundations and roofs that didn't leak. I thought about the year to come, a year of action, not words. The knot that had been tightening in my chest for a year finally unraveled. The phrase, "he forgot," had never been about him. It was an excuse for everyone who wanted to forget loyalty, to forget family, to forget conscience. And as the helicopter banked, turning toward the open sky, I realized that for the first time in my life, I wasn't just building on the ground. I had the entire sky to choose my path. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'm dying to know. Where are you listening from? Let me know in the comments below so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Like this video, and if you want to support us, hit that hype button to help this story be heard by more people.